Hi everybody, happy Sunday. I hope that wherever you are and whatever you are doing, you are having an amazing weekend. I apologise if there is a fan noise in the background. You'll see that Hema has a little camera on their front windshield. I'm going to be going out and filming a bit of a bike update that you're not going to see for another week. So I apologise in advance if you're kind of going, oh, she's going to go and film something, and then you're not going to be able to watch it for a while. Anyway, I hope that your weekend is a good one. And we are getting very, very close to the end of the year. And one of the things that reminded me of that was this week in the US, we had election week. So there was some elections that took place on Tuesday this week. Not every state and not every county within every state had an election, but there were some key races that were really, really interesting to watch. So there was a big race in Ohio, or a big vote in Ohio on whether abortion access should be made part of the Constitution in the state, and people voted in favor of making it so. So if you are a reproductive rights advocate, you'll have been very, very happy with that news. There were also some interesting gubernatorial races, and also there was a big race in Kentucky to see if the gubernatorial candidate was actually re-elected, a Democrat who had made some real real great progress in the state of Kentucky and was well supported by Kentuckians, which is kind of interesting, especially as Kentucky is traditionally a very Republican-leaning state. Also, the gubernatorial race, although I don't think actually it was a gubernatorial race, but control of the Virginian House and Senate was up for grabs, and Democrats were able to gain control of both the House and the Senate in Virginia, which is going to make some really interesting political things happening in the Commonwealth of Virginia, because it's currently a Republican governor, and that can make some really interesting dynamics happen. As you might have guessed, I am a bit of a political wonk. I find politics interesting. I don't know if it's just because I'm the age I am, or because of my background, or because of the fact that, you know, I believe everybody should have a voice and everybody should have an equal seat at the table, and sometimes our politicians don't do that. Which brings me to the topic of today's video. All of that means that we are now less than 1 year from the 2024 presidential elections in the USA. I know, feels like America is always voting on something, and in some ways that's true. But the 2024 election cycle, presidential election cycle, is a big deal. President Biden doesn't have the support that you would hope an incumbent president has. At least he doesn't appear to in the polls. Has some really negative polling numbers. The Republican candidate is looking like it's going to be former President Trump, who's going to try again to gain access to the White House. There are lots of people who are kind of worried about what would happen were he to gain entry to the White House, and I'm not going to delve into that, but if you are interested, go and watch a video by Legia, the lawyer, on YouTube. She's done a really good video on Project 2025, which is an ultra-conservative right-wing think tank that has come up with basically a really quite scary plan for America should Donald Trump regain the White House next year. Anyway, aside from Republican versus Democrat, because politics is a spectrum, as much as we forget that in our coverage of it and how we speak about it, I think it's fair to say that this election cycle, electric vehicles are going to be very heavily featured, especially after some of the stuff that's been happening in the last couple of months, you know, automakers scaling back their plans or scaling back the rate of transition to slowing down even the rate of transition to EVs. And there have been some concerns about what that will look like for the EV world, but also what that will look like for everyday Americans, and by association, what it will look like for people in Canada, because the Canadian EV market is heavily influenced by what's happening south of the border in the US, but also what's happening on a global level. I know in the UK there's been a real pushback against EVs from the Conservative government there. We've seen that mirrored in other governments around the world, especially ones that are leaning more towards conservative, right-leaning talking points. But here in the US, I think that next year is going to be a real tough time if you are an EV driver. I think there's going to be an increase in FUD. I think there's going to be an increase in misinformation. By the way, FUD, if you don't know, stands for fear, uncertainty, and doubt. The idea that you're spreading news stories and information that is designed to make EVs appear not a good idea to the average person on the street. I think there's going to be an increase in that. You know, President Trump, in his stump speeches, has talked about, making EVs means everything's going to go to China, and there's not going to be any EVs made in the US, which, you know, is demonstrably false. It's very easy to prove that statement incorrect, but there is a large group of people who listen to what he says and don't apply critical thinking to what they hear on the from stump speeches, and so will believe that EVs are terrible for the planet, that EVs are bad, that EVs are all of these things, and won't necessarily fact check themselves. So I would love to know from you what we should expect in the EV world in the next 12 months as we prepare for the 2024 presidential election. There is now officially less than a year left until that takes place. If you are not registered to vote and you are of voting age and you are eligible to vote in the US, now is a really good time to make sure that you are on the voter roll. Here in Oregon, if you apply for a driver's license in the state of Oregon and you are of voting age, you are given the opportunity to register to vote when you apply for your driving license. I know some other states do the same thing. Some states have an opt-in program where you can opt in to be registered to vote. Other states basically automatically register you unless you tell them not to. And some states just make it super hard for you to register to vote. But if you are somebody who can vote and you want to exercise your democratic right, now is the time to start thinking about the voting process and what you need to do in order to get that to happen. And there are some great resources. I'll try and throw some of them into the links for today's video that you can use to figure out, hey, where do I go to vote? How do I vote? What do I need to register to vote? And in some states, it's very difficult to register to vote. And in other states, it's kind of easy, and it's kind of done as part of other duties that you probably already do anyway, like here in Oregon, when you just automatically can get registered when you get your driving license done. Anyway, I guess that is the question for you. What do you think it's going to look like for the next 12 months? Are we going to see this rise in FUD? Am I worried about nothing? Or do you think that Thanksgiving and the holidays this year are going to be difficult for those of us who drive EVs because of people in our family who might be listening more to the FUDsters' opinions? Or do you think that all of the things that have been happening in the last couple of months are actually going to exacerbate it more than the political discussion and talking points over the coming months? I think, honestly, that we are going to see a push towards more oil. Political candidates, not just presidential candidates, but I think political candidates are going to try and argue that we need to drill more, drill baby drill. And this week also, obviously in the UK, we had the King's speech. King Charles III was very... He read the opening of Parliament. He has to read a speech. It was prepared for him, which is what always happens, and he talks about what his government are going to do. In delivering that speech, it was pretty clear that he didn't want some of the things that he said the government were going to do. It's clear that he didn't really want that to happen. King Charles has historically been very, very keen on organic and green practices, from farming methods through to energy generation. So yeah, I think the next 12 months is going to be very interesting. I'd love to know your thoughts. How do you think the political landscape is going to shape how people view and use EVs? And importantly, what that's going to do to EV adoption rates around the world? Let me know below. Thanks for joining me today, and if you've got any thoughts, make sure you leave them below in our Discord chat room, or you can reach out to us on Mastodon. Thanks to the amazing list of people scrolling by on your screen right now. They are some of the more than 1,500 people who help fund this channel through Patreon and YouTube, helping us cover our bills, pay our team, and making sure that we can remain 100% independent. If you'd like to join them and see your name listed below, just follow the links. There are a range of different tiers you can sign up for from as little as $1 a month, or if you pay yearly, just about $10.08 a year. A huge welcome to our newest supporters: Conrad Young, Neon Frog, Siobhan Greeny, Alan Savage, Scotty, Ray Mario, Jennifer, Nesklova, and the Lord of Chaos. Thanks for becoming part of the TE crew. If you'd like to support us with a one-off donation, you'll find links below to make Ko-fi and Bitcoin donations, and we even have an old-fashioned PO box you can reach us at. The address is also linked below. And if you're in need of some swag, you'll find our swag store also in the down below. We've got some great content coming up, so make sure you're subscribed on PeerTube or YouTube, and we'll see you again soon. We make new videos every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. If you want more, the mighty algorithm thinks you'll like this video, but we here also think that this one is well worth a look. See you soon, and as always, keep evolving.